This year, the No New Coal Power Compact was launched, led by Sri Lanka and Chile, along with 5 other countries. Pakistan, the Philippines, and Malaysia have all announced that they are stopping the building of new coal plants, and the Asia Climate Vulnerable Forum has expressed its support for this position. This year has also seen commitments from the G7, the Republic of Korea, and China to end international financing for new coal power. Together with this growing political momentum, the economics of the power sector have continued to shift. Smarter, greener grids are enabling higher shares of renewables, and it is increasingly becoming cheaper to install new renewables rather than continue to operate existing coal plants. The Asian Development Bank has created the first ever financing facility to support countries in realizing this opportunity by retiring their coal plants early. The coalition of countries committed to fully phasing out coal power continues to grow. This year, the Powering Past Coal Alliance grew to 41 countries, including Spain, North Macedonia, and Hungary. And it's not just countries doing their part. 235 energy companies have now joined the race to zero. 14 utilities are members of the Powering Past Coal Alliance, along with over 20 financial institutions, creating a growing list of investors committed to phasing out coal from their portfolios. The Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet joins philanthropies, public and private sectors to help ensure the benefits of clean energy access are truly universal. With the creation of the Energy Transition Council, the political, financial, and technological leaders of the global power sector have come together to make sure that for every country considering new power generation, clean power is the most attractive option, and to ensure that countries stepping out on the journey to make a just and inclusive energy transition away from coal enjoy the strong support of the international community. There are still challenges to be overcome on the way to making clean power accessible to all, and to kicking out coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel, from the global power sector. But this year, a tipping point has been passed. The transition is gathering pace. We are moving irreversibly to clean power for all, and we are consigning coal to history. The power sector is responsible for a quarter of global emissions, more than any other sector. But a global transition to clean power is already underway, and it is accelerating. By 2020, renewable power has risen to make up over 1/4 of global generation and is increasingly driving job creation and economic growth. Meanwhile, in the last decade, the number of people living without access to electricity has almost halved. Countries are abandoning plans to build new coal plants that they don't need. Since the Paris Agreement, the global coal pipeline has collapsed by 3/4. This year, the No New Coal Power Compact was launched, led by Sri Lanka and Chile, along with 5 other countries. Pakistan, the Philippines, and Malaysia have all announced that they are stopping the building of new coal plants, and the Asia Climate Vulnerable Forum has expressed its support for this position. This year has also seen commitments from the G7, the Republic of Korea, and China to end international financing for new coal power. Together with this growing political momentum, the economics of the power sector have continued to shift. Smarter, greener grids are enabling higher shares of renewables, and it is increasingly becoming cheaper to install new renewables rather than continue to operate existing coal plants. The Asian Development Bank has created the first ever financing facility to support countries in realizing this opportunity by retiring their coal plants early. The coalition of countries committed to fully phasing out coal power continues to grow. This year, the Powering Past Coal Alliance grew to 41 countries, including Spain, North Macedonia, and Hungary. And it's not just countries doing their part. 235 energy companies have now joined the race to zero. 14 utilities are members of the Powering Past Coal Alliance, along with over 20 financial institutions, creating a growing list of investors committed to phasing out coal from their portfolios. The Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet joins philanthropies, public and private sectors to help ensure the benefits of clean energy access are truly universal. With the creation of the Energy Transition Council, the political, financial, and technological leaders of the global power sector have come together to make sure that for every country considering new power generation, clean power is the most attractive option, and to ensure that countries stepping out on the journey to make a just and inclusive energy transition away from coal enjoy the strong support of the international community. There are still challenges to be overcome on the way to making clean power accessible to all, and to kicking out coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel, from the global power sector. But this year, a tipping point has been passed. The transition is gathering pace. We are moving irreversibly to clean power for all, and we are consigning coal to history.
Good morning and welcome to Energy Day here at COP26. My name is Luisa Baldini. I am a former BBC correspondent. I'm half Italian, half British, born and brought up in Africa. My British grandfather was actually born and brought up right here in Glasgow, just up the road in Hillhead. So I am delighted to be here to guide you through proceedings today. And today is all about showcasing the action taken by countries, by subnational governments, by businesses, by financiers, by social partners, by international organizations, and by civil society, of course, as well, to accelerate the global transition away from coal power and fossil fuels and towards clean power. This opening event, Accelerating a Just and Inclusive Energy Transition, will focus on two key areas. Ending coal power, firstly, of course, if we are to stay within that 1.5-degree goal. Secondly, putting people at the heart of a just transition to ensure the change to clean energy economy is managed in an inclusive and equitable way. This event is going to be launching two key international initiatives led by COP26 presidency. The first is the Global Coal to Clean Power Transition Statement, and then the International Just Transition Declaration. And so, to launch the day, could you please welcome our first group of speakers, starting, of course, with the man who sees himself as being the shepherd-in-chief of this summit, COP26 President Alok Sharma. We are also, if I just finish the introductions, joined by the EU Commissioner, Commissioner Simpson. From Morocco, we have Minister Ben Ali, Minister Steele from Grenada, and we also have Damilola Ogunbayi, the UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Sustainable Energy. We'll also be joined by a couple more ministers who will be joining us here on stage in due course. But for now, COP President, over to you. Thank you.
Well, friends, it's a pleasure to join you today to open the COP26 Energy Day. And today is absolutely central to our efforts here at COP26. Because what we're trying to do here in Glasgow is to keep the Paris temperature goal within reach, to keep 1.5 alive. And that means that we have to decarbonize our power sectors. Because power, as you know, accounts for a quarter of global emissions. And so when we took on the COP26 presidency, we were clear that we would make a big push on power. We wanted to push to end international coal financing. We wanted countries to phase out coal at home. We wanted to build up collaboration to support the move to clean power. And we wanted to ensure that the transition was just. We knew that if we achieved all of this, we would not just benefit the environment, but we would help create good green jobs and we would help clean up the air. And today, I think we can say that the end of coal is in sight. The progress we've seen over the past 2 years would have seemed like a lofty ambition when we took on the COP presidency back in 2019. Who would have thought back then that today we're able to say that we're choking off international coal financing, or that we would see a shift away from domestic coal power? At the G7 Climate and Environment Ministerial meeting, which I co-chaired in May, every G7 nation committed to end international coal financing this year. South Korea and China have joined them. And at that meeting of the G7, the group committed to move to overwhelmingly decarbonized power systems in the 2030s. Others, such as Malaysia, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, and Morocco, have committed to no new coal power. And so today, we are publishing the Global Coal to Clean Power Transition Statement, a commitment to end coal investment, to scale up clean power, to make a just transition, and phase out coal in the 2030s in major economies and in the 2040s elsewhere. It has 77 signatories, including 46 countries, such as Poland, Vietnam, and Chile, 23 of which are making commitments on ending coal for the first time. And later on today, the Powering Past Coal Alliance will celebrate its new members, taking total membership to 165. And these include 7 new countries and 14 new private sector and financial institutions, including NatWest, Lloyds Bank, HSBC, and Export Development Canada. Today, we also announced the Just Transition Declaration, signed by 14 governments and development banks, because we know that the health and prosperity of people and places must continue to be at the center of the transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. And you all know that renewables are booming too. Just a couple of days ago here at COP26, we heard Prime Minister Modi commit to generating half of India's power from renewables by 2030. By then, China will have 1,200 gigawatts of renewables, and UK offshore wind will support at least 60,000 jobs. All this helps to power the world to net zero. And if I can just say that net zero commitments now cover 90% of global GDP, including countries like Russia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Now that is up from less than 30% when we took on the COP presidency. And we are building up international collaboration to drive the clean power revolution. At the World Leaders Summit, we launched the Glasgow Breakthrough on Power. 33 governments have committed to collaborate to make clean power accessible and affordable and available to all by 2030. And last year, we launched the COP26 Energy Transition Council to support the transition in developing countries. It is now already supporting 12 emerging economies, and the Council will continue for at least the next 5 years. And just 2 days ago, I helped to launch the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, a new $10 billion fund that will scale up to $100 billion by 2030. And it is partnering with the Energy Transition Council with the aim to get significant funds to support the transition in emerging economies. Now, all of this progress is really welcome and it's good, but we know that there is more to be done. And ultimately, it is up to all of us. It's up to governments, it's up to businesses, the finance institutions, and civil society, and we must continue building the momentum through alliances and collaboration. So I say, friends, I do believe that the end of coal is in sight. I do believe we're getting to a point where we consign coal power to history. A brighter future comes ever closer, a future of cleaner air, cheaper power, and good green jobs. But we must continue to work together over this vital decade to finish that job. The prize is to keep the Paris temperature goal within reach. Thank you.
COP President, thank you very much, COP President. Well, we now have a very special video to share with you. Ambitious international collaboration is going to be essential to achieve our goals. As many of you will know, a new partnership with South Africa was launched on Tuesday during the World Leaders Summit. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible to bring all the leaders together in person for the announcement, but we have managed to bring them together for the first time virtually in this short video.
Dear colleagues and friends, there is no longer any doubt that climate change presents a critical and urgent threat to humanity. This is so because it will have devastating consequences for our economies and societies if we do not take action now. Bold action must start with accelerated decarbonization of our energy systems. This involves harnessing new technologies to reduce our dependence on high-emission fossil fuels, including unabated coal power. It requires that we move to more sustainable and cost-effective energy sources. While the energy transition is necessary for reducing global carbon emissions, this transition must also be fair and just. For many developing economies, this requires massive investment in alternative energy sources and other infrastructure. It requires substantial support for workers and communities throughout the coal value chain who stand to lose their jobs as well as their livelihoods. A just transition requires finance and support from wealthier nations to enable low and medium income countries to protect employment and to promote development. In South Africa, we have committed to ambitious emission reduction targets. Achieving these targets will require the transformation of our energy system at an unprecedented speed and scale. This will include the decommissioning, the repowering, and the repurposing of coal-fired power stations and the rollout of renewable energy. But our ability to do so will be determined by the extent of support that we receive from developed economies. The political declaration that we announced this week with governments of France, Germany, the United Kingdom, and the United States, as well as the European Union, represents an important breakthrough in this effort. Through this partnership, an initial amount of $8.5 billion will be mobilized over the next 3 to 5 years to support South Africa's just transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient future. This will enable us to implement our ambitious goals and to develop a model for a just transition that we hope can be used elsewhere. We are entering a brave new world bound together by our common destiny as humanity. We owe this to ourselves, to one another, and to the future generations. I thank you.
One thing that starts to give me confidence, or optimism anyway, it's that we are starting to create, for the countries that find it most difficult to transition away from fossil fuels, we're starting to create those coalitions of support to help them to move on. And so to help Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa in his vision, several countries, including the UK, are now working to supply $8.5 billion to help accelerate that transition away from coal, to help decarbonize the South African economy in a major way. And
today, as part of this commitment, the United States, together with the UK, France, Germany, and the EU, is announcing a new partnership with South Africa to help transform their economy to a clean energy economy more quickly. Right now, South Africa is the largest emitter in Africa, due in large part to the heavy reliance on coal for power. By closing South Africa's coal plants ahead of schedule and investing in clean power alternatives for the people of South Africa, and supporting an equitable, inclusive transition in South Africa's coal sector, we're following through on the pledge the G7 partners made in Cornwall to accelerate the transition away from coal in developing countries. And I realize the reliance on coal is consequential.
Cette solidarité est nécessaire car elle rend l'action possible partout où les solutions pour réduire les émissions existent. Un merveilleux exemple a été donné ces dernières semaines avec l'accompagnement que nous avons collectivement trouvé pour aider l'Afrique du Sud à réduire sa dépendance au charbon. C'est ce modèle d'accord qu'il nous faut ensuite bâtir sur la base de notre stratégie. Cet accord témoigne qu'on peut répondre aux défis d'une transition juste, équitable et ambitieuse.
Deutschland wird Teil einer Initiative sein, von der ich glaube, dass sie besonders interessant ist, nämlich einer Just Energy Transition Partnership mit Südafrika, wo wir zeigen, wie wir aus der Nutzung von Kohle aussteigen können. Und ich glaube, das wird ein Pilotprojekt für viele afrikanische Länder sein.
Mr. President, dear Joe, the example you gave of the new initiative with South Africa is an outstanding one, an exemplary one. It's an excellent showcase, indeed, that the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, and the European Union are together launching this Just Energy Transition Partnership with South Africa, teaming up with President Cyril Ramaphosa, financially supporting South Africa in making the transition out of fossil fuel and into clean energy. I think this partnership, and I hope it, will be a blueprint for similar partnerships with other countries, and I look forward to our discussion.
Well, no fancy production work there, but some very powerful words. Well, let's hear now from some of the countries represented here on stage about the strides they're taking to transition to clean energy. And if I could call each of you up by turn, please, you'll be going to alternate lecterns, and starting with Commissioner Simpson of the EU, please. If you could join me to come up to this lectern here, please. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to be here today representing the European Union at this historic moment. Since the last COP in Madrid, the European Union has made a political commitment and a legal commitment to become the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. The European Green Deal and the EU climate law set us on a green path for generations to come. As part of this journey, we are decarbonizing our energy system. Most EU member states have already fixed their coal exit date or are working on it. Coal-producing regions from all parts of the European Union are already making the transition happen, closing mines and power plants and developing alternative sustainable activities to bring new jobs. We are supporting these efforts through our unprecedented post-COVID green recovery program and a dedicated Just Transition program. The latter will mobilize up to 75 billion euros to support the most affected regions, sectors and communities across the EU. Coal is the largest single source of emissions globally, and this has to stop. As an immediate step, external coal finance has to come to an end. the current situation on the energy markets is no reason to pause the coal exit. On the contrary, it shows the urgency to accelerate the rollout of clean energy solutions and dramatically reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. The European example shows it can be done. Today, 1/3 of our electricity already comes from renewables. In 2030, it will be 2/3, and the use of coal will be history in many parts of Europe. But for the transition to be a success, we must leave no one behind. This is why the EU made the just transition a key pillar of the European Green Deal, and why we strongly endorse the political declaration to support the conditions for a just transition internationally, as well as the global coal to clean power transition statement. You have just heard about our just energy transition partnership with South Africa. This is one way we are putting our commitments into practice. To learn about others, I invite you all to attend the events we are organizing tomorrow at the EU Pavilion, together with the International Energy Agency, where we will present concrete measures we are taking to support a global just transition. I look forward to working with all of you to make the just transition a success. Thank you.
Commissioner Simpson, thank you very much indeed. And now if I could please call upon Minister Ben Ali from Morocco, if you could go to the other lectern, please. Thank you. COVID safe, COVID safe.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a real pleasure that the Kingdom of Morocco participates in this historic moment and flagship event that we have today on an inclusive and fair energy transition. And I would like on this occasion to reiterate my congratulations to the United Kingdom for the quality of the organization amid COVID-19 indeed, and the relevance of the themes that we have during the course of these 2 weeks. Talking about Morocco's experience, I think it's despite our low responsibility in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, we have revised, as you know, upward our ambition with regard to our NDCs by reducing our greenhouse gas emissions by more than 45% by 2030 instead of the 42% that we had before, as part of our integrated strategy of low carbon development by 2050. Our commitment, I think I'm not going to reiterate our commitments for a low-carbon energy transition that started actually more than a decade ago, based on 3 pillars: renewable energies, energy efficiency, and strengthening regional integration. And I'll come back to that later. And of course, we accompany that with a strong orientation for adapted innovation and some local content. It's a proactive political choice made by His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, and it has generated a dynamic among all political and economic actors, as well as civil society. Today we have 50 renewable energy projects with an installed capacity of 4 gigawatts that are already in service, and we have more than 60 projects that are under development and under construction. But that is not enough. It's important to note these projects are made possible thanks to our existing institutional regulatory framework that we are working 24/7 to streamline that regulatory framework and improve the guidelines, improve the business climate, and facilitate investments from the national investments and international investments as well. We have made progress in the impact of just an energy transition on social economic plans. We already have 2 platforms in terms of R&D, innovation, and industrialization that are already in operation, dedicated to green technologies, green buildings, and smart grids. And we have other developments, including, of course, in hydrogen, in energy recovery from biomass, and the water energy agriculture nexus. We are also witnessing an emergence of a local industrial ecosystem that we are pushing forward, and the rise of renewable energies and decentralized production is enabling us to really use these developments for the specific needs of many socio-economic needs. But here again, it is not enough. We are reviewing our energy strategy to provide a greener energy mix by 2030, based on, again, energy efficiency, but we are focusing particularly on the industrial and tertiary sectors and the promotion of sustainable mobility, in addition to energy saving potential of more than 20% by 2030. How to accelerate that inclusive and just energy transition? I think it's necessary to have control over the impact to minimize the technological and financial risks and to maximize the social economic benefits, especially at the local and regional level. I will finish by saying that if we don't want new coal, as far as Morocco is concerned, there is no energy transition without a stronger international and regional cooperation to promote green technologies, of course, hydrogen applications, but to really increase connectivity between our neighbors and our trade partners. I would like to finish by reiterating my thanks, and we support the different initiatives that were announced at this COP, with COP26, which are aligned with our strategic vision and development model. Thank you very much.
Minister Ben Ali, thank you very much indeed. And now if I could call on Sri Lanka and Minister Dissanayake, please, from this lectern. Thank you.
Good morning, ministers, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you today. I present the beautiful island Sri Lanka, where nature and the planet are singularly addressed as the mother, a beautiful mother. She has given so much, a lot of sun, a lot of rain, and the unimaginable scale of biodiversity, both in fauna and flora. We have taken good care of her, trading so much very lightly, contributing just 1 of 2,000 to the emission burn of the planet from human activities. We reaffirm that fragility will remain as our way of life in the future too. However, we have taken some great initiatives to reduce even this small contribution from Sri Lanka to the emission burden of the planet. Considering energy sector as a notable contribution to the emissions, we have taken all possible measures to accelerate the energy transition. We anticipate to generate 70% of our electricity from renewable energy resources by 2030, doubling our 36% share of the renewables in power generation today. This requires an additional of 9,000 megawatts of clean renewable energy capacity, leading to an annual electricity generation of 21,000 gigawatt hours, translating to an investment of $10 billion US. It will contribute to an annual CO2 emission reduction of 14 million tons by way of avoiding petroleum fuel-based electricity generation. Our effort does not end here, and it encompasses demand-side management too. We also anticipate the National Energy Efficiency Improvement and Conservation Program to reduce the energy demand, so that our clean energy targets will be realized quicker and the gain realized will be sustained. With these efforts, we are trading towards carbon neutrality in the energy sector by 2050. We anticipate a further addition of 6,000 megawatts from renewable energy sources to cater to the fossil fuel demand dislodged by transport electrification, which will again be supported by transport energy demand reduction measures. We have proposed our ambitious target in the nationality demand determined contributions, where we invite the spirited cooperation of developed economies to realize the 20% supported NDCs. It is our sincere hope that developed economies and the green funds will reduce the transaction burden of these fund flows and technology transfer, making it easier for the developing world to access those. We earnestly request you to develop simpler tools and hassle-free conduits to allow funds and technology to reach the developing world with the amount of least delay so urgent actions can be taken to reduce the present and future emissions burdens from the developing economies. Thank you for all presence here today. Thank you.
Minister de Sanayake, thank you very much indeed. And if I can now call on Grenada and Minister Steele, thank you.
Colleagues, friends, a very warm good morning. As a small island developing state in the Caribbean, which neither produces nor consumes coal, you may ask, who am I to add my voice to this conversation? The answer is a simple one. The single most impactful intervention we can implement today to significantly bend the curve to a 1.5 pathway, this is why we must consign coal to history. We commend those who have already taken important steps, countries that have committed to coal phase-out dates and announcements to end. I have some technology challenges here. We commend those who have already taken important steps, countries that have committed to coal phase-out dates and announcements to end in phase financing of coal projects abroad. But we still have a long way to go. The longer this takes, the less likely we are to achieving our goal to limiting warming to 1.5. We know what needs to be done. For richer countries, no more coal power from 2030, and all coal-fired power stations shut by 2040 at the latest. But the question then is, how do we achieve a just and inclusive transition when globally we still have close to 1 billion people without access to electricity? Here is where some of the difficult questions need to be answered. There are those that say we should transition to gas and that gas is a bridging fuel. Let's be honest, this is a bridge to nowhere. Gas needs to peak now and begin a rapid decline. We have much cheaper and cleaner alternatives in the form of renewable energy and storage, and green hydrogen is coming. Fossil fuel subsidies are propping up coal and gas. What a wasted opportunity when you consider the renewables that could be rolling out with that money and the jobs that come with it. Speaking as a small voice from a small island, even more creative solutions are needed than those currently on the table. What is required is unprecedented levels of cooperation and genuine resolve between those in the G20, individually and collectively. As a group that generates 75% of global emissions and constitutes 80% of global GDP, between them, this issue can be resolved. If they don't, then who will? And this is why we're all here, as individual nations, with all our domestic challenges and complexities. But we're also here as a global community with the power, the wealth, and the mandate to do what is needed collectively. The future of countries like mine depend on whether or not coal seams around the world are left as they are. And this is why Grenada lends its support to the Clean Energy Transition Initiative and commends today's launch of the Just Transition Declaration. For my island, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to leapfrog the energy systems of our grandparents to create a new energy system that is fit for our children. I thank you.
Minister Steele, thank you very much indeed. And now to hear from another island nation, Minister Shauna from the Maldives. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to congratulate the COP presidency and the Secretariat for the impossible work that you have done in making us come here and be in attendance in person. Thank you to the UK for their leadership in getting us all here safely. We came to COP because this is our lifeline. Excellencies, the Maldives' climate and energy challenges are enormous. The Maldives depends almost entirely on imported fossil fuels in meeting our energy needs. The imported diesel costs us a fortune, leaving us at the mercy of volatile global energy markets. Our islands are scattered across the sea, making economies of scale impossible. Considering this, and despite the fact that Maldives' fossil fuel emissions are relatively negligible, it is perhaps no surprise that the government's policy is to quit fossil fuels as quickly as possible and replace them with something the Maldives has in abundance: sunshine. Today, 12% of our energy is coming from renewables. As a country on the front line of the climate crisis, a transition to renewables is not just about mitigation, but also about adaptation and building resilience. To achieve this transformation from an economy run on diesel to one powered by the sun will require substantial amounts of foreign capital and investments. It also needs reliable data and innovative technology. We are working to install floating solar in our lagoons. The science is so clear, the technology is available, the prices are declining. We just need access to these. World leaders, negotiators, funding agencies, all of us are here today, but the planet does not have room for any more negotiations. We just have to decarbonize. We have to keep it under 1.5. The difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees for countries like the Maldives is a death sentence. We have to give away those hard positions we have been holding on to for the past decades. I don't like to think of the Maldives and small islands as victims alone. We can also be victors. We have been part of the energy transition. We're coming out of a pandemic. We found the vaccines. Treat climate emergency like an emergency, and I am confident that we can all do this together. But even if we go net zero just this year, it won't save us, because this is not a unilateral issue. We need the entire world to get behind the science and transition to a world fueled by renewables. Thank you.
Minister Shauna, thank you very much indeed. Ministers, Commissioner, thank you very much for your words. Fantastic to hear those clean transition commitments. So can I ask you please to leave the stage? You can join your seats in the plenary, on the plenary floor. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I am delighted to introduce our next speaker, the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General and the CEO of Sustainable Energy for All, Damilola Ogunbayi. Damilola, please, over to you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to be here with you all today. On behalf of the UN Secretary General, I'd like to thank the COP President Alok Sharma and his team for their efforts for prioritizing energy here at COP26, including through the Energy Transition Council and the great work the team there have been doing. Energy accounts for over 2/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. But at the same time, 759 million people in this world still lack access to basic electricity, and over 2.6 billion don't even have access to clean cooking solutions. Over the next 9 years, we have to do two things at once. First, we must cut emissions drastically. The emissions gap report just released by the UN Environment told us the new and updated NDCs only take 7.5% of predicted 2030 emissions, while 55% is needed to achieve the Paris Agreement. Second, we must deliver on the promise we made in the Sustainable Development Goal 7 to provide affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy to all by 2030. If we are to do this by 2030, we need to radically rethink how we deliver energy services. We must answer the call of the UN Secretary General and COP President to co-sign coal into history, starting with the OECD countries by 2030 and globally by 2040. After 2021, no new coal plants should be in the pipeline, which is also reflected in the great work that has been seen from the Global Call to Clean Power Transition Statement. If this year is the year we put an end to coal, this must also be the year that we prove to developing countries that clean energy is the most attractive and most affordable option by providing them a clean energy offer. And we must do this through technical assistance, collaboration, and making finance for clean energy dramatically easier to access. We must show why clean energy is an important part of the blueprint for a sustainable future and move beyond thinking that providing clean energy for basic household is enough. It must be energy for businesses, economic growth, and industrial development. Consider the alternative. Right now, we're on track for a 2.7-degree temperature rise, and by 2030, we will still leave over 600 million people without electricity and over 2.3 billion people without clean cooking. This is not compatible with the commitments we made at Paris, or is it compatible with the promise we made in 2015 to achieve Sustainable Development Goals by 2030? We are running out of time, so we have no choice but to be decisive and recommit to the collaboration and financing necessary to make just, equitable, and inclusive energy transitions possible for those who have contributed the least to climate change. Together, we are the architects of a sustainable future for all. And on behalf of the Secretary General, I want to thank all of you gathered here for all the great work you have done and committing to all the work ahead. Thank you.
Damilola, thank you very much indeed. We now turn to the second part of our event, which is a panel discussion between ministers from countries that are actively pursuing a just and inclusive energy transition and international experts from the International Labour Organization and International Trade Union Congress. To chair this panel, I am delighted to introduce Vic van Vieren, Director for Enterprise at the International Labour Organization. Vic.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It was very exciting for me as a South African to hear the opening remarks and the deal that's just been done with President Cyril Ramaphosa. I look forward to going home and seeing the progress. But Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the panelists on stage, and I'll introduce them now, and then we will go one by one after I've made a few opening remarks. On my right, the Secretary of State, Mr. Kwasi Kwarteng from the United Kingdom. On his right, Secretary Jennifer Granholm from the United States. And on my left, Ms. Sharon Burrow, the General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation. We also have two video inserts that we will hear from Vice President Teresa Ribera of Spain and also Minister Svenja Schulz from Germany. The panel is set to discuss the Just Transition Declaration that the UK COP26 presidency has spearheaded under the Energy Transition Council. The ILO has been privileged to contribute to the work of the Council. A just energy transition is urgent, indispensable and possible. It's about maximizing economic and social gains while effectively managing the risks of the economic, technological and social transformation. The good news is that we have a positive narrative. There is clear evidence of more gains for the economy and people than losses. Comprehensive and coherent policy frameworks aligning energy, economic and social policies are indispensable. Representatives of governments, workers and employers organizations some time back at the ILO developed guidelines for a just transition for all, providing a policy guiding framework and practical tools for countries. The Just Transition Declaration that we're talking about today reflects several elements of the guidelines and represents a solid foundation to build upon. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Secretary Kwarteng from the UK, who's announced, Secretary Kwarteng, the UK has announced that it will phase out coal from Great Britain's energy system by the year 2024. What plans are the UK putting forward for a transformation grounded on the imperatives of a just transition and the creation of decent work around the world? I hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Vic. It's great to hear from you and also to be at this forum this morning. Colleagues, it's clear to us all that to keep 1.5 degrees in reach, we need to consign coal to history and make clean energy our future. But of course, beyond the climate imperative, there is a green industrial revolution out there within our grasp that promises huge economic opportunities for our people and our communities. We want to see revitalized industries, new sustainable jobs, increased prosperity, and healthier and more resilient societies. It's important that we push and harness the benefits from this huge economic shift so that nobody is left behind. Each country gathered here today is unique and faces its own unique set of challenges. So while we must accelerate the coal to clean power transition globally and keep 1.5 degrees within reach, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Yes, we have, as you say, Vic, had a rapid transition from dirty coal power generation to a cleaner, greener approach. It has been remarkable, I think, but it's also presented challenges. And we recognize that the pace in different countries will be slightly different. We know that our net zero futures are reliant on more than just technologies changing, but also in the way changes in the way we live and work together. So we must build this low carbon transition with the people most affected and also provide ways in which local communities and workers can be involved directly in the decisions that affect their future. So whether you're a coal miner in South Africa, Indonesia, or Colombia, you want to know what your future will look like, what the future holds for your community and your children. And I'm delighted, actually, that we've launched the $8.5 billion Just Energy Transition Partnership with your country, Vic, South Africa, alongside our US, German, French, and EU partners. This long-term partnership has the potential to support South Africa to reach the most ambitious target possible within its updated nationally determined contribution. I think that this partnership actually will provide a template, a blueprint for how we can collaborate on energy transitions with coal-intensive economies. When I look at the partnership that we've announced with South Africa, I see that the skills of a miner today will be needed to extract the minerals that go into solar panels that'll power our lives tomorrow. So that's an example of the just transition. And I think the commitments in this Just Transition Declaration seek to provide a framework for developed countries to assist developing countries and emerging economies as they transition. This work is absolutely critical. We can only achieve a net zero future for the world if we all move away from coal and towards greener energy sources. And it isn't just about government. It's not just governments that are making a difference. Actors from all areas are pushing and driving this just transition, and we welcome the efforts of the ILO, our panel moderator this morning, and the IEA and IRENA in their recent work, as well as the work of the CIFs in supporting inclusive and just transitions. During our COP26 presidency, the UK will continue to work closely with all our international partners to strengthen and progress global climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kwarteng. It now gives me great pleasure to turn to Secretary Granholm. Secretary, the US administration has re-engaged with the global climate agenda with a massive plan for climate action, job creation, and just transition. How does the US view a just transition, and what are your plans for implementing it?
Great. Thank you, Vic, so much. And my thanks to State Secretary Kwarteng and the entire UK delegation for their incredible work in organizing this declaration. So we've all talked about it. We all know that we face a great challenge in eliminating carbon pollution and avoiding the worst impacts of climate change. But as has been said, the opportunity at hand is even greater. Clean energy is an engine that will get us to our net zero future and bring all communities along, fossil communities, frontline communities. I know this because I have seen it firsthand. Just quickly, a personal experience. In 2009, of course, the Great Recession tore through particularly the American auto industry, an industry that was reliant, of course, upon the internal combustion engine. Hundreds of thousands lost their jobs in the state of Michigan, where I was governor. We had the highest unemployment rate in the nation. The pain that I saw in the eyes of workers who had the rug pulled out from under them through no fault of their own, that pain has seared my soul. I became obsessed with how we can create jobs in clean energy to diversify our economy. And with large federal and state and private sector investments, we in Michigan began focusing on electric vehicles and their supply chains, the batteries, the guts to those vehicles, and employment rebounded as we re-anchored local economies all across the state. And today, Michigan is a national leader in EV manufacturing. The internal combustion engine companies set their sights now on 1/2 of their fleets being electric by 2030. Line workers who once assembled those gas-powered vehicles are now building electric trucks, and an industry that was once dependent on fossil fuels is accelerating toward the clean energy future. President Biden is quintupling down on the investment strategy that enabled Michigan's shift. All told, his Build Back Better agenda will invest over $800 billion in clean energy and climate action. That is an historic amount, and it's all about growing the pie by orders of magnitude through clean energy build out, creating jobs, jobs, and more jobs. Jobs in solar and wind and hydropower and nuclear that'll ease the burdens of carbon pollution, jobs in EVs and batteries and storage that'll get factories humming, jobs in carbon capture and geothermal and clean hydrogen that'll demand skills that fossil fuel workers already have, jobs for electricians and technicians and carpenters and engineers and miners and smelters and steel workers and line workers and a whole host of journeymen and women. Our goal is not simply replacing one industry with another, it's using the enormous talent within our communities to build a more diversified, resilient economy that can address long-standing inequities, by the way, and one that can offer
But we shelved those projects, both of them, and we shifted to 3,700 megawatts of clean hydro energy. At the same time, we came up with another announcement, which was that we will not have any more imported coal projects in Pakistan. And I would like to say over here that, for us, it is still the least cost option. But when we think of climate change and the effects of air pollution and the health effects of having that sort of pathway in Pakistan, it makes complete sense to get off it and then to get on to a cleaner, a more healthier pathway, not only for Pakistan, but also for the world. I also want to share two indicators which really show the pathway that we are taking. The World Bank came out with some, very interesting indicators about 2 weeks back. They did a screening of their lending portfolio, and Pakistan is one of the big receiving countries, to see which are the countries which are really putting development onto carbon-friendly and climate-friendly pathways. And I'm glad to say that Pakistan topped that list. We had 44% of our mainstream development funding being climate friendly, and a major part of that linked up with clean energy transition that we are making. Similarly, the NDC that we had given a business as usual pathway in 2016. We updated the NDC this year, and we have shown that in 2020, we have already gone down 9% from business as usual in our NDC. And we've given a pathway in which by 2030, we can drop it a further 15% below our business as usual. And the real gauntlet that we have thrown is to the world. And we have said that Pakistan is willing to drop it to 50% of below business as usual if we get climate finance. The same climate finance that we have been talking about over the last decade. That finance, if it becomes available and with the right technologies, we can drop it to 50% below business as usual. And we've set out the projects. It's a $100 billion portfolio over a 10-year period that we require to make this shift. Finally, I would just like to say that, when we talk about energy transition, it has to be a just energy transitions. One of the gaps in this whole story was that what about countries who are already on, polluting pathways and they want to unlock themselves out of those projects? For instance, Pakistan has got some imported coal projects, which is less than 10% of our energy portfolio, but they're still there. And if you want to, close them down today, we still have to cater for the IPP agreements, the PPA agreements, which mandate, state-sponsored guarantees for 60% capacity payments, even if you close down those projects. So that was a gap in this whole scenario. And that's where I really want to thank the UK government, because when you held this dialogue, in that dialogue, I actually heard of this mechanism called the Energy Transition Mechanism for the first time. It is being, it's an innovative, out-of-the-box instrument, which is going to target a transition of projects which are already in the pipeline and which are, belching out carbon, to retire those projects and shift to clean energy, megawatt to megawatt, without penalizing the government. That's the most important part. Because otherwise, if you do it, you have to pay a financial cost. So when I heard about that, I got in touch with ADB, and today, this afternoon, we are going to be signing up as Pakistan being one of the 3 pilot countries to be testing that instrument in Pakistan for that shift. So, if I was not on that dialogue, I would not have heard about this, and this would not have happened. I think we need the world to make this transition, but this transition has to be just, so that countries like Pakistan who want to go along this pathway are not paying out of their pocket. It is something which is not only good for them, but also good for the world. So that, delta has to be covered. And I believe this instrument is trying to do that. So we have signed up, and if it happens in Pakistan, it will really be something that the world can also then follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We're now going to listen to a video message from Vice President Teresa Ribera of Spain.
The Just Transition Agenda is not only an agenda to preserve and to go along the different polluting industries to get into something much more clear, much more clean, to get energy and industrial response to the challenges of becoming climate neutral. The Just Transition Agenda, as I said, is something much more deep. It is something that connects to people. It is something that has the people in the center of the decision-making process. It is something that pays attention to the opportunities that any citizen in the world, in terms of access to jobs, the capacity to build new opportunities in those local areas and regions where the coal and other polluting industries used to be the main economic central piece of the economic activity, have to transform into something different. We need to ensure that the well-being and the benefit of all citizens are part of this discussion and are properly tackled by the different governments. The social and equity considerations are key when defining a just transition agenda. We need to preserve from the negative effects of the climate transformation, but at the same time, we need to ensure a message of hope, a message of transformational agenda full of opportunities for those being affected of this transformation. The social cost of carbon, the carbon dividend, needs to be reinvested on people, needs to be reinvested in local communities, need to define a set of responses that are accepted and built with the local communities, so to ensure that any citizen takes part of the definition of the future to come in the regions. This is what it has been at the core of our just transition strategy. This is why in Spain we have invested so much and so long in the proper definition of what we want to do in each of the local areas where a coal plant is being phased out. Defining where the different neighbors, the different local authorities, the different workers have properly identified the opportunities, the add value of what they want to be in this context. What we have done is to work to lower, to facilitate, to avoid the social tensions, but at the same time we need positive action, we need a positive discrimination, so to facilitate through different measures that this becomes an attractive destination for new investments. So that this means that citizens, workers do want to stay and do have an opportunity to stay with a decent job being in the horizon. And this is something that can generate still different tensions, as we have been witnessing in the turbulence due to the high electricity prices. Transitioning from the benefits of one system to the benefits of the new system require much attention to the social dimension and the transitional cost and opportunities of this transformation. Consumers and workers need to be in the center of our decision-making process. We need to build this inclusive capitalism, but we need to pay attention to the social measures, to the equity and solidarity aspects. The cost is unacceptable when it is always paid on the shoulders of workers and consumers, the other way around. We need business being involved in a sincere but in a constructive manner. It is not just a question of fiscal and economic benefits, it's a question of investment on people.
Thank you to Vice President Teresa Ribera of Spain. We're now going to listen to our second video message from Minister Svenja Schulz of Germany.
Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, our energy systems must be completely decarbonized in a few years' time to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And we are all familiar with the challenges this brings. We have come together in Glasgow to take the next steps. Decarbonizing our economies opens up great opportunities if the transition is just, inclusive, and comprehensive. Germany will be climate neutral by 2045. Phasing out coal-fired power generation is the first step. Society and industry support this phase-out along with the phase-out of nuclear power. In Germany, we involved workers, businesses, civil society, communities, and other stakeholders in this decision. In future, we will continue to work on the energy transition together. And this requires support, for example, structural policies that promote innovation, continuing education programs, and the modernization of infrastructure. This support pays off for those affected and for the energy transition. As a supporter of the Global Coal to Clean Power Transition Statement and the Declaration on Supporting the Conditions for a Just Transition internationally, Germany has renewed its commitment to close cooperation. Cooperation at all levels with other countries and with stakeholders. Sustainable, inclusive energy supply has long been a priority of Germany's international cooperation work. Recent examples include Germany's major contributions to the Accelerating Coal Transition Programme of the Climate Investment Funds and 2 new projects in the Federal Environment Ministry. These projects have received funding of almost 40 million euros. The first project focuses on work on just transition and building a global network for knowledge transfer with partners in affected regions in India and Indonesia. The second is a project we are planning with partners in South Africa to support core regions there. The aim is a just transition from promoting coal to sustainable economic activity. Just transition creates a secure and fair future. It is a historic opportunity to achieve sustainable prosperity for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Schulze. I'm now going to turn to our last panelist in this discussion, Ms. Sharon Burrow from ITUC. Sharon, the trade unions have been at the forefront of the agenda for a just transition, including its uptake in the Paris Agreement. At this point in time, what would you see as a missing piece of the puzzle making this just transition a reality? Over to you.
Thanks, Vic. Well, we all know we're in a race against time for a sustainable future for both people and the planet. Clean energy is the foundation for the vital transitions in heavy industry, in transport, in construction, in agriculture, in our cities and our homes. The trade unions with the ITUC, the global union federations, we are totally committed to climate ambition, but it must also be in parallel with just transition. There can be no stranded workers and no stranded communities. We know that there is no future for coal. That's painful for our workers. We know there must be a near exit date from all fossil fuels. That's painful for workers. But the answer is jobs. Jobs, jobs and jobs. The good news is, Vic, that there are jobs in renewable energy. For every 10 jobs in renewable energy, there are 5 to 10 in manufacturing supply chains. And if they're good jobs with just wages, there are 30 to 35 in the broader economy. In fact, with the World Resources Institute, the ITUC just released a jobs study called the Green Advantage, and it shows dollar for dollar, pound for pound, investment in clean energy production returns at least 2 jobs to 1 compared to fossil fuels. So, as I said, jobs, jobs and jobs, climate-friendly jobs, good jobs with just transition. This is the key to build trust and support in the speed of shifts required. We need national jobs plans, but we also need company jobs plans. Plans agreed through social dialogue in line with the ILO guidelines. We also need to make sure for older workers that there are secure pensions, and for all others that there is income support, skills and redeployment support through the process of transition. And we cannot ignore community renewal, where people must have a say in their future. Indeed, the South African partnership is founded in a good framework. There is a national jobs plan. It's been negotiated for a just recovery through NEDLAC, their national social dialogue structure. There's now a work and community impact study from Eskom, the utility that is responsible for shifting the country from coal. And now there are negotiations with unions for an aligned plan for jobs in the company and for communities with those affected. That's a model we need to emulate everywhere. We thank the UK government for coordinating the Just Transition Declaration, building on the Silesia Declaration. This is so important with its commitments to leave no one behind. And today I can tell you that the C40, the B team and the ITUC released a joint statement on just transition and the energy crisis. Teresa Rivera raised it. This statement puts forward a united front of mayors, unions and business, calling for government leadership to assist all actors in the 2 urban crises for urban residents. One is, of course, climate crisis and indeed the jobs issue. The other is aspiring energy prices. Both of these things sit at the heart of just transition. And Vic, in conclusion, I acknowledge the IEA principles and thank the governments and the IEA for working with us and civil society to give those guiding principles life. And the critical message here, the critical message from everyone is integrating the urgency of action with just transition. It will take all of us, so let's get on the job.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. And thank you to all our panelists for their excellent presentations this morning. You know, coming to the COP meetings at the beginning of the week, or just before I came, I go for a walk every morning. I live in a little village just outside of Geneva. And I go very early in the morning, and it's at 5 o'clock and it's still dark. And as I walk through the forest area with the trees forming a guard around me and the cloud forming a covering over my head, there was a gentle breeze that opened up the sky, and the stars were shining so bright that it felt like I could pluck one off from the sky, like plucking an apple from a tree. And it made me think about the importance of these discussions, that we need to reflect on the value of a human being and the value of our planet, because this is what this is all about. And it made me think of my 6 grandchildren and wondering whether they would also experience what I've experienced on the beauty of this planet. And then once we've reflected on that, we can then recognize the importance of these political and technical discussions and the future implications it has for all of us and our families across the globe. I wish to thank the UK government, an appreciation and our gratitude to our panel members, and for the UK and its COP presidency for this highly important initiative, and one that creates optimism and hope as we leave at the end of this week. So thank you very much, and I hand back to Louisa.
Vic, thank you very much. Vic van Vieren from the International Labour Organization, and thank you to all your speakers. If you could now please leave the stage and join your seats in the plenary, and you'll see Kwasi Kwarteng has remained. We are going to hear some closing remarks now from the Secretary of State at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Secretary of State, yes, please.
Thank you, Vic, for chairing that interesting, lovely discussion, brilliant discussion. And also thank you to Louisa for inviting me to make concluding remarks. I've been really interested and stimulated this morning to hear the progress to scale up the deployment of clean power, to end investment in new coal, and indeed to phase out coal power and support a just transition, recognizing that communities must be at the heart of that endeavor. This progress that we're making means that for the first time, we can actually see that the end of unabated coal power is in view and is attainable. When I was growing up in London in the 1980s, coal was ubiquitous. Coal provided over 70% of Britain's electricity generation. Today, that coal, which provided so much power for Britain in the 20th century, that coal provides less than 2% of our electricity, and it will be phased out completely by 2024. We've taken massive strides to cut emissions while growing our economy, and we've also seen workers, our workers, and workers all over the world taking existing skills and employ them in new, decent, local jobs. But as we've said in this session, each country is different. But I hope sincerely that many of our friends and our neighbours across the world can learn from lessons that we've learned here in the UK. As a government, we believe that it is an undeniable truth that competition, innovation, and entrepreneurialism within a market framework can lead and will lead to new and better products, services, and technologies at lower cost for industry and consumers. Public money alone, we must remember, will not be enough to end our contribution to climate change by 2050. We need to leverage trillions in private capital to develop new technologies to lower emissions. We must now join together to scale that process up and to speed things up. That's why, through the Glasgow Power Breakthrough, world leaders set out this week. That's why these commitments are so important. The Glasgow Power Breakthrough, I think, provides a new ambition for how, working together, we can make clean power the most affordable, accessible and reliable option for all countries to meet their power needs efficiently by 2030. Making the 2020s a decade of delivery with an unprecedented acceleration of both the innovation and deployment of clean technology we need. Today, on Energy Day, we will hear more from a number of international coalitions driving the coalition, the alliance from coal to clean power. We will hear from the Energy Transition Council. We will hear about the Green Grids Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid, and of course, the Powering Past Coal Alliance. I want to thank them, and I want to thank COP26's principal partners from the energy sector, SSE, Scottish Power and National Grid, for their continuing support. We can't rewrite the past. Some of the damage that we've already wrought upon climate is sadly irreversible, but we can write a new chapter that changes how the story ends. I think the potential rewards of the green industrial revolution are truly transformational, and with the right approach will benefit everybody in the global community. We will consign coal to history, and we will move together to a cleaner, more sustainable and more prosperous future. Thank you all very much.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed for your motivational words. Thank you very much. Well, that concludes the opening event of Energy Day. But we will be back here in the Cairngorm room for 2 further events, as the Secretary of State alluded to. At 11:30, there is an event hosted by the Energy Transition Council, making the global transition to clean power a reality. And then at 3:30, that event hosted by the Powering Past Coal Alliance, called Powering the World Past Coal. For now, please could you exit promptly so that the whole of the room can be cleaned, and I hope to see you at the next event. Thank you.
The power sector is responsible for 1/4 of global emissions, more than any other sector. But a global transition to clean power is already underway, and it is accelerating. By 2020, renewable power has risen to make up over 1/4 of global generation and is increasingly driving job creation and economic growth. Meanwhile, in the last decade, the number of people living without access to electricity has almost halved. Countries are abandoning plans to build new coal plants that they don't need. Since the Paris Agreement, the global coal pipeline has collapsed by 3/4. This year, the No New Coal Power Compact was launched, led by Sri Lanka and Chile, along with 5 other countries. Pakistan, the Philippines, and Malaysia have all announced that they are stopping the building of new coal plants, and the Asia Climate Vulnerable Forum has expressed its support for this position. This year has also seen commitments from the G7, the Republic of Korea, and China to end international financing for new coal power. Together with this growing political momentum, the economics of the power sector have continued to shift. Smarter, greener grids are enabling higher shares of renewables, and it is increasingly becoming cheaper to install new renewables rather than continue to operate existing coal plants. The Asian Development Bank has created the first ever financing facility to support countries in realizing this opportunity by retiring their coal plants early. The coalition of countries committed to fully phasing out coal power continues to grow. This year, The Powering Past Coal Alliance grew to 41 countries, including Spain, North Macedonia, and Hungary. And it's not just countries doing their part. 235 energy companies have now joined the Race to Zero. 14 utilities are members of the Powering Past Coal Alliance, along with over 20 financial institutions, creating a growing list of investors committed to phasing out coal from their portfolios. The Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet joins philanthropies, public and private sectors to help ensure the benefits of clean energy access are truly universal. With the creation of the Energy Transition Council, the political, financial, and technological leaders of the global power sector have come together to make sure that for every country considering new power generation, clean power is the most attractive option, and to ensure that countries stepping out on the journey to make a just and inclusive energy transition away from coal enjoy the strong support of the international community. There are still challenges to be overcome on the way to making clean power accessible to all, and to kicking out coal, the dirtiest fossil fuel, from the global power sector. But this year, a tipping point has been passed. The transition is gathering pace. We are moving irreversibly to clean power for all, and we are consigning coal to history.